Welcome to Third Space Conversations.
Where real life happens in between everything else.
I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Ashleigh.
And this is a space where we talk about all the things that don't always have a place.
The in-between moments, real conversations, and the stuff that we are actually navigating.
Because life isn't just work and it isn't just home.
There's a whole lot that happens in between. And today we are talking about using our anger for fuel, and coming into the second half of the year, how we can keep ourselves motivated. We do have a special guest with us today. Lewis Goodpasture is joining us. We're super excited to have him here. I know for past listeners, might be a little shocking, a little bit of a skew from our normal, but we really want to make sure that we can bring in all sorts of perspectives and share as much information as we possibly can. A little bit of info about Lewis. He is the regional sales vice president at a financial firm. He holds the RICP, so that stands for Retirement Income Certified Professional designation, which is pretty intense. He started working as an internal wholesaler at his financial firm that he works at now, and worked up the ladder to the position that he's in. So he didn't just kind of skip over and land in this. He really had to learn how to work through a lot of these frustrations. And I'm sure we've all heard, financial industry is incredibly cutthroat. Insurance, that is an aggressive industry. So I'm sure Lewis is going to be able to give us a lot of information about turning anger into a fuel. You graduated from the University of Alabama, so that's super exciting. And then now I hear you're on the off season from coaching T-ball for your kid. I'm sure there's plenty of anger and frustration you have to use as fuel there with a lot of little kids running around. Lewis, it's great to have you with us.
Yeah,
Thanks
for
so
much
me.
for coming. Yeah,
excited to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. So I wanted to open with some anecdotes and see kind of what all of our takes are as far as using anger for fuel. And also, when are some times that maybe we caught ourselves using anger in the wrong direction and maybe we convinced ourselves it was for fuel? And that's Ben, my husband. But Jennifer, what about you? When have you used anger for fuel, or tried to, or maybe used it inversely?
It's funny because when I was talking to Lewis about joining us today, and I kind of told him what the topic was, and I think you kind of were like,
Am I an angry person?
No,
I'm not. You don't look particularly angry, for what it's worth.
I was like, I'm not either. But I tell you what, you mess with my kid or you cross somebody that I care about, I will burn the world down. And I think that's exactly what I said, to try to write something or fix something that is. And I think that anger as fuel gets kind of a bad connotation, like a lot of the topics that we talk about. It gets kind of a bad connotation. But the reality is sometimes we need a little righteous indignity, or righteous indignation, I guess is the word that I'm trying to find there, to motivate ourselves to do hard things, right? To do things that are maybe outside of our comfort zone. And I'll be honest, my anecdotes will mostly have to do with not about me, not being angry so much about something that happened to me, but mostly about fixing a situation maybe that is happening to somebody else. I'm learning.
I mean, they say that the only thing that separates a vigilante from a villain is purpose.
Well, yes, I it's all about perspective, right? Like on the problem, which is kind of a scary thing, but I think that's very true.
I'm sane. I'm safe. It's fine, everybody. Lewis, what about you? Especially coming through financial and having to work your way up in a firm, especially one that has a high turnover rate. I imagine you've probably definitely had to use some opportunities of turning a little internal rage or indignation into something that kept you motivated to continue in that career.
Yeah, I mean, like any good salesperson, my background comes from a failed athletic background. So that's I think that there's a huge comparison that you can draw between those two, and sort of what we do and what an athlete's mindset kind of has to be. And so my first thought after Jennifer made the point about family, which is a whole other kit and caboodle that I could open up. It was kind of thinking back to my athletic career. So I was a competitive swimmer growing up, and and that's what led me to Alabama. And I thought, part of my downtime between seasons was playing water polo. And I don't know if anybody knows anything about water polo, but that is like an incredibly aggressive sport, physical sport. Yeah. There's
and this demanding. It is physically demanding as well as aggressive.
Yeah. And there's this whole element of below the water line. Like, refs can't really see what's going on below the water.
I didn't even think of that.
And there's a lot of pain that happens underwater, a lot of illegal activity going on under the water. And that was probably the first time, like, winning wasn't everything in my family. It was the only thing. So that was like the first time that my parents kind of shifted how I was brought up from like, hey, respect everybody, don't act up, don't be inappropriate, always follow the rules, to hey, somebody elbowed me underwater. What'd you do back to them?
It shifts from good sportsmanship to win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, within the realm of reason, right? And kind of how I was raised. So, I think I've kind of brought that component into work again within reason, right? Like, we work in a highly regulated industry. And in general, when you're selling things, you want to be ethical, right? So, I think that there is that sort of determination, dedication that stuck with me from my athletic background into what I do today. And I wish I'd learned this lesson when I was an athlete. And this is what I think of with anger. There are just things you cannot control.
Right.
And I think that that's sort of where anger becomes, like, that's the definition of the difference between anger and rage, right? Like, anger is something that you still kind of have within your fingertips of control. Rage is when you see red and things might kind of get out of control at that point. So
that makes total sense.
Yeah, 100%. And I am notoriously, like, I teeter between anger and rage. I can be ragey, but I've mellowed out a lot. But, I was thinking about the episode today when we were kind of getting prepped, and, something for me that's always come up. And for any of you that heard the mother wound episode, I talk about this in it. But I have a lot of people that meet me on the street that knew me growing up that are like, oh, you've turned out well. And they don't realize that one phrase enrages me in such a way, but it has turned into a way to push me to continue not being just a failure at life. Like, I will be a better mom. I will be a better wife. I will be better in business because of the expected failure rate that I faced. And it made me so mad. Like, y'all are just cool with that. And just nobody thinks about how that passive comment really, what that really says to somebody, and it's kind of just this really bleh. So that has turned into my motivational thing of, okay, don't get mad, get better.
Prove wrong, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There was a research done in 2019 that says that suppressed anger leads to higher rates of abusive and criminal behavior down the line. And I think that's what we were talking about with the rage versus anger thing, right? There are healthy ways to get mad and to address things, but suppressing it is not always being the superior person. So what do we think, between the three of us, are some of those lines between when we are being in control, being mindful of our anger, using our anger as a positive source to move us forward, versus our anger takes us over and we just become blind to what we're doing?
Well, I haven't talked about hormones yet in this episode.
It was coming. I feel like I've laid the groundwork. This is a good one.
The line blurs significantly when you're dealing with some of the hormone shifts that perimenopause brings you. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
But
you got kids. He knows he's married. You'll get there
when your wife gets here. So you'll remember this story, Ashleigh, and I don't know if I've referenced it here on the podcast before, but the anger that I felt that turned into absolute rage when somebody blew the horn at my son.
Yeah.
Trying to pull out of the parking area. Like, that was, thankfully my son was there and pulled me back into the car, because that was like flip of a switch. I was ready to pull somebody out of their car window, and we're in Texas. I could have easily been shot. Right. So it was,
or you could have won the fight. I'm just saying, I'd bet on you
on adrenaline and cortisol levels. So I definitely was prepared to fight a bear, but like not a good response. So it's not one that I don't feel like I flip into the rage area very easily. Like I can only see a couple of times in my life where that line has been crossed. And I think that I totally see the correlation to suppressing anger to causing more violent tendencies, because when we suppress it and not deal with it in a healthy, like functional way, it's just there waiting to be uncorked, right? So it's like a champagne bottle. When you take the cork off, it's gonna go flying, rather than unscrewing a cap and letting fizz out of a Diet Coke, right? So
yeah. Or Lewis, in your case, somebody kicking you under the water and you've got to keep moving. Otherwise you might be, you know what I mean? Someone's going to look from the top and see you drop the ball, or, I don't know the rules of water polo,
exactly what I was going to say. If you become that person in the pool or on the court, that team is going to target you. You become now the point of focus for that team because you're the weak link in the chain, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you just said a word that's very important to recognize here. If you're not dealing with or venting out the anger in a healthy way, it is a weakness.
Oh yeah.
If you have that, I view it as a weakness. If you have that explosive, I just fly into a rage over, first of all, we can't trust how you're going to respond to anything.
100%.
And that is that's a liability on when in dealing with you. And so that's, to me, is considered a weakness.
I was going to say my least favorite flavor of anger for me, and it's my most common one. And this is partly acknowledging that I am 6'5", 280
He's
pounds.
a big guy.
I can't act out. It's a problem in society if I act on my rage and anger. So what I do is I just shut down entirely sometimes when I'm angry. And it's like the story that came to mind of the most recent anger that I could express. And this is like the silliest thing in the world. But 4th of July weekend, my wife and I have plans for 4th of July. And we live in hill country. So Wimberley's not far from us. So the plan was to go to Wimberley for their 4th of July parade in the morning. And then we were going to kind of make a day out of it after that. Well, we get to Wimberley, 9 a.m. on Saturday, and there's one of those traffic signs saying, traffic's being adjusted for the 4th of July parade, July 3rd, 2026. So we realize in the moment that we are at the wrong place in the wrong time, and our day is quickly unraveling, right? And one thing led to another, where I'm trying to fix the day. My wife's trying to do her version of fixing the day, which were two totally different things. My version of a fun day is getting out and riding bikes and going to the pool or going whatever, this, that, and the other. Her version is hanging out
Stick
at home.
to the itinerary.
Or exactly that. Or if that's falling apart, let's just call it a day. Let's go home, hang out together as a family.
It's a mulligan.
And we never talked about that. So the day just kept getting more and more tense because my suggestion was something she didn't want to do. And really what that was both of us placing our image of our childhood on our kids that day. And not having that conversation. And that was the anger, right? And me shutting down did absolutely nothing to resolve that issue,
Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing. This idea, you're saying, well, because of your size, if you get ragey, there's a lot of expectation that comes with that. If you so much as get a little red and raise your voice, people are like, oh, he's, using his whatever. Especially, I know as women, we get that a lot, right? If you are contrarian or you start to raise your voice, right? Oh, they got special words just for us, And you do have to be mindful of it to a certain degree. But I also think that you're very right. And the shutdown is as detrimental as the shaken, champagne bottle that blows off everywhere. Both can lead to the same negative outcome, which is unresolved. It ultimately gets worse down the line, right? Or what are you just going to shuttle yourself into being a tiny mass of a human with no voice and no opinion for the comfort of everything around you, whether you do or don't agree? Like that's not living either, right? And so finding that balance, I think, is really important. But I don't think that there are a lot of opportunities that teach people how to mitigate anger healthfully, right? There's a lot of when you're a little kid and, the don't cry. I was a don't cry family. I was raised in like crying as a form of emotional manipulation. You don't cry. Like you're either showing you're weak or you're manipulating somebody. So you just don't do it. So I tend to err on the side of shut down. And it's taken a lot of work to be like, okay, no, I don't like this thing. And I'm going to say it in my nice voice-ish, but to try and make sure that I at least build space to articulate and be honest. And that I don't think that means you have to still get your way. Like, I don't think you should expect that when you get mad and you use it for a fuel or you're honest about being upset, it's okay to expect it to just change and go your way. But I do think it's fair to expect to be heard in whatever direction that goes in.
Well, and you also, what brings to mind when you talk about that energy, right? The energy of being angry, our body doesn't forget that energy is there. It doesn't just dissipate somehow. It's still stored somewhere in us to be released in a more explosive format if we're not
ulcers.
So, what are some healthy mechanisms for dealing with anger? Like, one of the things that comes to my mind is running, right? So sometimes if I'm really angry about something, I'll be honest, I'm not a runner. But I've got a good clip.
I've never seen you running.
What was it that I said?
She gets back to zero real quick. She takes like 10 steps just running and she's like, all right, I'm good.
Just the thought.
She's like, I jogged down 4 stairs. We're good.
I will say, like, when I was training, I did a half marathon, right? And so when I did that, I thought I would die. Yeah. And the only thing that got me across the finish line was that there was a 67-year-old realtor who caught up with me. And I was like, I think I told you, I turned into Gandalf. You will not pass. Anyway, so competitive and a little angry. But like, if you put on certain music, there's an Eminem song that's not coming to my mind right now, but it's "Lose Yourself in the Music," blah blah blah.
We're dating ourselves, just hard FYI with that reference.
It's a good way to get some of the anger out, right? So whether it's physical exercise, kickboxing would be a great thing. I know you probably shouldn't do things like jiu-jitsu angry. People are tapping out, and you got to let them go.
Yeah.
So I think that physical activity is a good release for anger. Rage room.
In case you happen to know somebody who likes smashing stuff, you might know a girl. I don't know.
Yep. The Craft Riot, that's a good place for releasing some anger. What do you use?
Yeah. Have either of you heard of Dr. Jason Selk before? Is that a familiar name?
The name
is ringing a bell, but I can't see a face, so I'm not sure.
He's a performance coach. So he's worked with the St. Louis Cardinals when they won back-to-back World Series titles, I think.
Yeah.
Worked with Auburn's baseball program when they kind of were up and coming, which I hate to give Auburn credit, Roll Tide over everything. But anyway, the point is he coaches a lot about mindset. So again, things I wish I had when I was a teenager as an athlete that now I'm fortunate enough to have in the corporate world is some of his teachings. And so he preaches what he calls the relentless solution focused mindset.
Yes.
And he talks, his story is about an individual who, before he even got into the sports world, he focuses, he studies on performance in humans, and he met an individual who got in some sort of rock climbing incident and was trapped for days and ended up surviving the incident. And what he used to get through it was relentless solution focus. And one tactic that he teaches is this applies to anger, this sadness, like just a tough situation in general. What is one thing that I can do that's going to improve my situation today, right now? Whether it is going to make a material difference or it's going to set the in motion the path to get back to that place. But that's a lot easier said than done in the moment. Like that blow up that my wife and I had, I don't think that I came up with hey, let's talk through this for 3 or 4 hours. And it was because I needed to meditate. And my version of that is going on a run or a long swim or a long bike ride. So I had to like do that to get through like the selfishness, you know, and like, well, yeah, what would make this better is if we all went to the river today. Like, no, that's not,
but that's just for you.
Right. Exactly. So it was, hey, what's the issue? Like, what are we really dealing with here?
Yeah, and foundationally, what's actually the problem?
And it was, I'm projecting my childhood, she's projecting her childhood, and we're not talking about that. Right. And so it was the combination of, I don't know, like whether it was releasing some of that energy or if the release of that energy allowed me to kind of part through the trees a little bit and see the image a bit more clearly. But ultimately, it's getting to that place where you know you're making an unbiased decision to get to that next step. And it can be incremental. It doesn't need to be the silver bullet to solve the solution. It's just, what's one thing that I can do? If I'm angry at this person, what's one thing that I can do to slow down and change the situation?
Right. Well, I think it's important to remember, right? So anger, a lot of the stress responses, right? Anger, hurt, frustration, all these things, they release adrenaline and they release cortisol in our brains. So you can't actually have a calm down until those chemicals get cleared from your brain. So I think it's okay to take a minute. And, I like that you reference having solution-based. I tell people all the time, like, please don't bring me more problems unless you have a suggestion of how to fix it. Yeah. Right. I'm pretty aware of the problems in my life. I don't need to be reminded. If you want to talk about it or we need to talk through it, let me know that. But don't just come and be like, hey, this needs to be done. This isn't done. Cool. What's the solution? What's the move forward? And then I always fall back on, an enemy of my enemy is a friend of mine. And sometimes I know that sounds so childish, but if you can look at a situation for you and your wife, for example, right? Y'all had a shared enemy. Your day got screwed up. Yeah. And then it prompted this whole childhood thing that y'all were both trying to navigate by yourselves, but you really had a shared enemy, right? So if you can look at it as what's really the thing causing the problem here, it wasn't your wife wanting to do something different. It wasn't you wanting to go and like have an outsidey day. It was the shared enemy of, okay, calendar got janky. So then what, right? Now you have an ally, right? Because ultimately y'all are wanting the same goal. And I think, again, I know it sounds childish, but like, I don't think there's anything wrong with making a friend of your enemy's enemy when the time calls for it. Have boundaries, everybody. I'm not saying go like key boyfriend's cars or any, like, please no one take this out of context. But, I do think that there are times where, especially in those bigger life situations, if you really look at the root of what your enemy in that moment is, it's rarely ever the other person.
Ashleigh, the first thing I said to my wife when we started to work through the issue was, I think today didn't look anything like the two of us wanted it to look like.
Right. That's your shared enemy.
And then it was, here's what I thought. What did you think? It was the day got away from us, and that sucks. So what are we going to do about that? And how are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future?
Yeah. I also think, and both Jennifer and I have kids as well. It sounds like your kids are much younger than Jennifer's and I are. We've been doing this for a while. But, I also think that it's really important for your kids to see that. I think there's a lot of families that vilify anger and getting mad and arguments and those conversations. And I think it's really important for kids to see that anger can be a tool and you can overcome it. And having those conversations where you address it and you name it reasonably is actually a very strong quality to have. And like we touched on earlier, rage is definitely a weakness. I mean, we see it in rage bait culture right now, right? I mean, I'm so guilty of watching YouTube with my kids where there's podcasters that literally just invite people on to rage bait them about things. And I laugh way harder than I should. But you look at them and you can't help but be like, what is wrong with it? Like, why can't they control themselves? It's not that big of a deal. And I think that there's a lot more needing to be seen from when that difference swaps from when the anger is controlling you and you no longer control it and you're just responsive, versus using it as a fuel and being meditative and going, okay, I didn't like that, and I'm going to use that to change X, Y, and Z moving forward.
to be honest, that was the motivation to solve the solution. This is going to sound bad. It was not, let's make the wife happy. It was, your kids just watched you yell at each other for like 2 hours. And that's okay, as long as they know that the outcome was mom and dad still love each other.
Right.
So like, it's a fallacy to think that our kids aren't going to see us ever not fight. What's most important is that they know that we love and care for each other at the end of the day, regardless of what that fight was.
Well, and they see you resolve it. Again, they see you acknowledge your shared enemy. They see you use that anger as a point to launch to have better communication and to continue to move forward as a family unit, right? And there's all too often, does it become easy to let that anger be the negative motivation, right? Well, I'll show them. And I do think that it's really important to be, like you were saying earlier, have that meditative, take your walk, listen to your music, take your jog, whatever it is you need to do, have a snack for some of us, just saying, to then acknowledge, okay, am I justifiably angry at whatever this is, right? Do I have a right to be, or did it just hit a nerve that I really need to evaluate in myself? And then, okay, am I being retaliatory, or am I using this to push me further? And I think that's such a hard thing for people to acknowledge, especially when you're in the midst of it, right? We see red and the internal narrative is like that person or that thing, but I think it's really important to try and learn how to navigate through that. You were saying, Lewis, that you're kind of quick as going out and doing something physical. What are some other ways that you found, especially with young kids, it's very hard to stay calm? At least it was for me with children. I may or may not have yelled more than I'm proud of. But what other tools, especially when you're working in the financial industry? I know Jennifer knows this firsthand also. It's cutthroat. Then you go home, you have a partner that you're not the same with, right? They are their own person. So you inevitably are going to have some pushback, like you were talking about with your wife. Then you've got little kids that are very self-centered. They need stuff. You may not get time for yourself. You may not have that opportunity to take that walk when the kid throws the yogurt at the wall or whatever. What other tools do you think at the end of that day can you have? Are you a sit in your car for 20 minutes before you go inside kind of person, like I may or may not be?
Still working. The two things that come to mind are, and this is a privileged response, I understand that, make the time. So when I was in the entry level role, I was serving folks like Jennifer in the central time zone back where we moved from in Charlotte. So I was working central time in the Eastern time, right? So I was working until 6 p.m. Eastern. My son was in daycare. My wife was working all day. So she would pick up my son, bring him home. I was still working for another hour. He was 2 years younger, which he's 4.5. So he was like half the age he is. And that's a big change, right? Yeah. So bedtime was 7:30. So I got an hour and a half with my son every day before he would go to bed. And then that's when I would go and get my exercise in. And by the time I got home, it's 8:30. My wife's in bed. She's asleep by 9. So in a 24-hour day, I'm spending 2 hours with my family. And that led to issues. So somebody suggested a crazy idea, one of my mentors, and he said, you should get up at 4 a.m. And I was like, you're a crazy person. And I love it. And he was absolutely right, though, because that allowed me to get up and the first hour of your day is not super productive. You're probably scrolling through your phone, but you're already up 3 hours before most other people are, right? So you're starting very early. I can get in my exercise. I can start my day, wake up my son. So now I'm starting the day with my son. I can spend all that time when he gets home. So again, I know whatever, it's a high pressure industry, but honestly, I think most people can just put in a little bit of effort yourself to create that space. So I think that there's a component of making time, and then It's patience. And we kind of have already touched on this a little bit with like whatever your meditative state is. If it's going for a run or literally just sitting there, not to be a free ad for Jason Selk, but he is great. He talks about, he talks about the process of deep thinking. And the first time I was challenged with this, I was totally wrong. So I'll ask you, how long do you think it takes scientifically to deep think as a human? If you had to guess.
8 minutes.
Okay. Ashleigh, do you have an answer?
I mean, I would probably guess closer to 30. I would think it had to be somewhat in a REM cycle comparison would be my thought process of woken REM cycle. I'm the one who can't talk, but that would be my guesstimate.
30 minutes. So anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes. That's where I was. It's 60 seconds. 60 seconds of pure silence, right? You are focusing solely on that problem. And so that, honestly, if I can't get in the run, if I can't get in the bike, I'm going to leave the room. I need 60 seconds, and I'm going to come back in a better headspace than I am in right now. So those are my two thoughts.
You know what? I can totally see that. I can totally see that the correlation between what you just said, like stepping out of the room, even if it's just to take a breath, to focus, get a different, our perspective changes just because we step through a threshold, right? And so I that makes total sense to me. And yeah, now that you've said it, it does make sense. You can be in a not a meditative necessarily thought space in 30 seconds, I suppose, if you've got a really great practice at it, but to be able to have a deep thought within 60 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, again, we were in the financial services industry. If somebody comes to you with a complex plan or a complex issue, most of that work, if you're sitting down and thinking about it, it's going to be done in 60 seconds.
Right.
You're going to draw out the path, and maybe you need help from other people, but that path is built within a minute.
Yeah. But you know the direction
exactly
that you're going to take.
Yep.
And you're going to fill in the rest of the gaps on it as you're kind of working through it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah, I totally can see that.
And like as you're saying it, I'm literally thinking I consider myself decent at taking criticism, right? Like I'm a firm believer in constructive criticism, but there are times where like I will also be like I need to I'm not disengaged or disinterested in what you're telling me, but like I need to walk away so that I can come back and hear what you're saying without being reactive. Right. So that completely makes sense. Actually, I just never, I guess, I don't necessarily do that as an anger response. I do it more as like I can feel myself wanting to respond to something somebody has criticized me on. And I know I need to just, they're telling me something I want to hear to be a better person. And so I need to just kind of quell that inner ape in me so I don't go beating my chest and acting like I know things I don't know.
But is it actually anger that you're feeling? Right? So it is potentially.
It could just be conflict. I
also think very highly of myself. It could be anger that I'm masking as something else. We don't know.
So this is a true story. My firm, we do an aptitude test so that you can, as you're getting onboarded, you can learn how to better communicate with your manager, all that stuff, right? So when you're done, they print out 2 pages. You answer like 10 minutes worth of questions, and they tell you about like different energies that you might carry with you, but then this final output is 2 pages, and it's like your spouse doing a write-up on you. It's creepy. It's like to a T. Here's who you are. Here's how you perceive challenges. Here's how you overcome them. Your strengths, weaknesses, all that. So we do this activity. The instructor gets up in front of the room. She goes, "Okay, here's your output. We're going to spend 5 minutes, read your outputs, and I want you to highlight everything you agree with and underline everything you disagree with."
Interesting.
My entire bio, Ashleigh, was underlined. Everything was underlined. Like everything. I was like, this is so wrong. This is not me at all. And I'll never forget the last paragraph, the first sentence started with, "You may not handle constructive criticism well." And I remember being like halfway through underlining it and being like, "Oh,
drop the pen. Drop the pen."
We still illustrated this.
Yeah, I mean, and I get that. And what's funny about that is, as we're talking about using anger as a fuel and like a motivator, there are different motivators for every person. Obviously, like you were saying, every personality has something different that pushes them. Some people are like, they just need a cheerleader that's like, you've got this. Some people, it is having that doubt that kind of pushes and be like, no, I'm not, you don't know, like, I'll show you kind of thing. And I think I love when people can take the time to get to know themselves from a different person's perspective. I talk about this a lot within my family is I have an idea of who and what I am in the world, but it's always very interesting for me to see responses back about how other people see me, right? Like honestly, I would consider myself an introvert. I really love my own company. I will lose an entire weekend to a book out away from people. Jennifer, how would you classify me?
Is in the angry, how would I classify you? I would classify you, if I'm not in the scale of just angry, is you're a bit whimsical.
Like, see, I would not think of myself as whimsical. I think of myself as, but I have to acknowledge that you know me very well, and yeah. I maybe have some flighty moments, we'll say. But it's interesting to see those things come back. So did that change your perspective and your ability to move forward? Did that motivate you to be more open to criticism, or are you still underlining when somebody comes at you and tells you what they think about you?
Oh yeah. That's still my natural tendency. Yeah. And in fact, I can think of a very specific moment. I'm going on year 12 of my career. Okay. Been at the same firm the entire time. And for 11 years, I don't think I ever got a bad review. Like it was, you're doing great. Like you're a team leader, you know, whatever it was. It was always positive feedback. And when I made this change, I was looking for a man. So I moved from home office HR type work to our sales staff. And when I made that change and I eventually got to the level that I'm promoted to now, there were a handful of managers that I don't want to say I could pick from, but there were opportunities in a few different divisions with different managers. And I intentionally chose somebody that was a harder coach, somebody who I basically was like, this guy's going to tell me I'm wrong, and he's going to tell me everything that I'm doing wrong. And right before I had my daughter this past March, he came out and traveled with me and gave me a lot of really strong feedback. And I was like, why are we doing this in the middle of the day? Right. Like, I got more people to see. I need confidence. And it really ate me up for about a month. But the outcome was and part of this was taking time away with my daughter, reapproach my practice with an added level of vigor, a different perspective. That took me 2 months of working through, like, why was he so heavy-handed with me? Yeah. Why? And the answer was what I put in front of myself, you know, like and it's still asking for it, but in the moment I was still the neurons were firing, and I'm like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
I suck. It's fine.
Yeah.
I had a thought and now I don't remember what it is. So sorry about that.
You're good. So like I said, I like criticism. I am notorious for saying things like suck less, be better, you know, and as a general way of approaching things. But, you know, hey, I think it's solid advice, quite frankly. It kind of encompasses everything.
But thought that I was, sorry, go ahead.
No, finish.
Mine was, you created awareness around it, right? So that report that you underlined everything, you may not be able to like change the fact that you still don't love accepting criticism
in the moment.
But you're aware of the fact that, okay, I know that I don't like accepting criticism. I'm receiving criticism. Let me pause for a second to really kind of think through what's actually being said to me.
Or can I put mechanisms around me to just be okay with that? I.e. a manager who's going to be honest and be a little heavy-handed
and
with
make you
me.
better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Ashleigh.
No. And I do think that that's an important thing. So out of curiosity, when you were doing that, were you angry when you got that page back and you're underlining it? Or was it just more of like an annoyance? Because it sounds like that was a pretty big pinnacle move for you, right? That did motivate you to get a manager that is a little bit more, tough and force you into that area of growth. But did that actually anger you? Did it make you question how you saw yourself? Like, what was the emotion in that before you had that pin drop moment?
Like I said, I'm generally not a very angry, like I'm almost like a passive person. Like I'm like to that point of anger. That's probably the closest emotion that I got to anger. But yeah, it was a little bit like, all right, how much are we paying this firm to come in and do these aptitude tests? Like, these people are kooks. Like, this is not.
I've done the ASVAB for free with the Air Force. It's fine.
Yeah.
That's super funny.
Well, I think that it's also important to frame anger for the tool that it can be.
Yeah.
And I think that, studies have shown, and I can't reference one, but that how our outcomes generally are better when there is an element of anger motivating us. And I can say that in my own career, that the times when I have performed best have been when I've been either challenged in a way that lit a bit of a spark under me, and probably some of the fact that I was challenged on something created a little bit of anger, and that's where the spark came from. Yeah. But I think that also one of the cool things that anger can do for us, it doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? It gets a very negative connotation, but again, that righteous indignation, kind of like, this just isn't right. Or to your point that you said something, I have a coffee mug that says, tell me what you think I can't do so I can get started. Yeah. Right. Like, let me prove to you, if it makes sense for me, let me prove to you that you have misjudged me, or that you have underestimated my capabilities. And so being a female in this industry and holding the role that I hold, I think oftentimes it's changing, but oftentimes we get looked at as we're not capable or not.
We're not good with numbers. Math aren't girl things.
Or that we just don't have the capacity to make the decisions, or the
always going to make an emotional decision. Yeah, there's a lot of weird stigmas there.
What do you see?
Well, I was going to say I completely agree. And it's reminding me of, so again, went to Alabama 2011 to 2015. So right in the sweet spot of the greatest college football dynasty over a 15-year period.
Right.
And
not biased at all.
Yeah, not biased at all, but there it was. But
facts-based.
There's every Saturday, ESPN would come on before an Alabama kickoff, and they would say, Alabama is favored by 45 points today, or 50 points today. And they would always say, but somehow Coach Saban is going to get that team thinking that they're the underdog. And there's this famous hype video before, I think it was the 2018 national championship against Georgia. And he's giving this speech, and he's talking about the effort, the dedication that the team has put in over the last year. And then he turns the focus to Georgia, and he said, they think this is their game. They're coming to attack what you have put all this work in for the last year. And in my favorite line, he goes, and that makes this personal. And so now he's flipping that gear of anger.
They're emotionally invested now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's the competitive mindset. There is a place that the best athletes have to get to. And football players talk about it all the time. I have to have the mindset that I'm going to go out and kill somebody on this field. Like, that's the point that they get to. Yeah. And I think that anger it's one of the only tools that can get you to that headspace to leave no doubt in the competitive space that you're the guy, you're the one.
I'm going to get the job done. I know that in what's the movie, The Blind Side, where she's trying to motivate him, and she's like, act like they're chasing your family or whatever. And that protection, anger around somebody like going after his family was the thing that motivated him to actually make the tackle, because he was such a passive kind of big guy that he knew that he could really hurt somebody, and he wouldn't want to do that. So you go after your family, he's going to hurt you.
Yeah, and I think sports is a great avenue for this. Home team advantage exists. Why? Because you don't want to be humiliated on your own home turf, right? but there's been a lot, we occasionally follow baseball, if we're going to follow a sport. And one of the interesting things you see is if a team comes out and gets a huge lead off the cuff, right? And then something happens and they start messing up and the other team starts getting runs, it is almost impossible for the team that was winning in the first to bring it back because their morale is so low. And the morale of the team that's now catching up to them is so, like you were saying, it's personal. They are angry. They are not going to be made a fool of, right? Just that morale shift can be what makes or breaks, especially in athletics. But I think a lot of that can be applied to anything that we're doing, right? If you come out the gate and you're winning at everything, it doesn't take much to knock you off that pedestal and make you question yourself. And the real challenge comes in of if and when that happens, can you turn that into a motivating factor? Whether it's anger that you use to do that, of I've been unfairly, this opportunity was taken from me, or I didn't get the promotion, or whatever that may look like. Or even if it's just putting one foot in front of the other, knowing you are good at what you're doing. But there definitely is a huge morale essence to that beyond just lighting an angry torch, you know?
I think that's what you need to get to that. What's the one step I can take today to put myself in a better situation?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that
it's not yelling at people, I hear.
One of the things I think we take from this conversation is how do we encourage not only ourselves, but how do we help the people in our lives, right? Like you have children, teenagers, mine are a little bit older. Yours are still very young.
It's a big struggle with our 4.5-year-old right now. He's super quiet, super reserved. We go to Schlitterbahn all the time. He's the type of kid, if he's waiting in line for a ride, kids will just walk in front of him and he'll like, oh, sorry, let me get out of the way. And so that's something that we're working on right now is how do you in a healthy way,
do you
right?
know that you own the space.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then also to recognize that anger is a normal emotion that we're all going to feel.
Yeah. And to not vilify it.
Yeah. It's not wrong to be angry. The part that we need to work on is making sure that doesn't flip over into that rage space, right? Yeah. So how do we help? Like, for example, the thing that I am thinking of, my team, right? When they have frustrations or they have, they're angry about a certain situation, how do we take that and help them turn that into the motivation to make something different happen the next time? And I think that there's it's something I really need to think about, like how do we do that? But I think a lot of things we have to lead by example, right? So yes. It's important to show the times when we're angry, that something has made us angry, to our children, to our colleagues or something, not in a way that is like inflammatory, right? But to share, hey, I'm frustrated about something. Here's the things that I'm thinking of doing to solve that frustration. And I think that especially with our children, they need to know that we get angry sometimes. It's okay to be angry. It's an energy that we can use to solve problems, right?
Well, I also think
not in a violent or bad way.
Yeah. And I also think, we talk a lot about how important communication is. We did a whole episode on communication breakdowns. Ironically, we were having a very difficult time communicating that day. But I think another big point is learning to articulate within yourself or with somebody that you can trust, or a peer or a spouse or your kids. What are you actually angry at or about, right? Are you angry that that guy cut you off and he's being or are you angry that you didn't leave 10 minutes earlier when you knew you should have? Well, like, can you really articulate what you're angry about? And that a lot of times, in my opinion, there's so many things that I get angry at and I have a tendency to be responsive about, that ultimately I'm actually angry that I could have done something different to prevented this and I didn't, and now I'm dealing with those repercussions. Mm-hmm. And if I can articulate that I'm actually mad at me and this circumstance is because of that, well, now I have a little bit of a control freak side of me. I really like being in control of things. I like just having my hands in every pot. I can control my actions. I can change that. I can't control other people's, right? I can only be in control of me. So if I can have a moment to go, oh, I'm angry because I caused this. I made a choice that did this, or I didn't, whatever, or, I don't like that what someone's telling me is truthful and I'm in the wrong, whatever that might be. I now have the opportunity to control and change that. So I think just being honest about what you're really mad about or at is really important. And, communication really helps with that, of being able to talk to somebody honestly, even if you're in that rage space and you haven't controlled it, and having them be able to go, okay, well, let's dig through this. Like you were talking about, Lewis, with your wife, right? You took a break and you could come back and go, hey, the day got away from us. What are we really mad at? Not each other, not the whatever. This is childhood stuff we have brought to the table, right? But taking that time to identify what is actually causing that emotion, I think, is so important. We all need to spend, I think, more time evaluating why we respond the way that we do.
That reminds me, when you brought up family, and that can be a point of anger, protecting your kids, right?
Yeah.
We had a road rage type incident 5 months ago too. And it's a perfect illustration of this. We were on 35 somewhere, and it was one of those where, like, it wasn't like this person was getting into the merge lane last second. They were cutting the whole line, drove right in front of me and slammed on the brakes. And I got my son in the back seat. And I did what you are not supposed to do. I pulled up to the guy next to him, rolled down my window, and gave him a piece of my mind. And my wife is sitting next to me, and she's like, "What are you? We're in Texas. Stop. We need to go." And after I'm driving away, she's like, "Why would you even do that?" It's like, we've got our kids in the back seat. That guy almost caused an accident. Like that was totally irresponsible. She goes, "Well, what does yelling at him have to do with anything?" And I was like, "Well, he can't be doing that." And I literally, I'm deep thinking about it. And I was like, I guess probably like getting his license number and calling the police probably would have been a better, because it wasn't that like he got one spot in front of me in line. It was that
he was recklessly driving.
Exactly. And he endangered my guy. Again, I care less about myself. It's my kid in the back seat though. Right. And that was what I cared about. And there was a way more productive action I could have taken.
Right.
Yeah.
And the funny thing, I think every family has that incident. I had the same incident with my husband, and it actually got bad. The guy actually followed us into a gas station, and it could have gotten really, really bad.
Same. I had a guy pull a gun on me. So I threw while driving down the highway, and my kids were in the car. So yeah, I mean, and
the reality of the situation is that guy endangered your children for a second. Like, you further endangered them by instigating the whole interaction with them. Totally understandable. Yeah. But when we can take just a moment to pause, which I know when we're in that rage reflex, right? It's hard to take that moment to pause to go, okay, what am I really angry about?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes we can't, we have to spend a few minutes in there trying to sort through it. And I think the interesting thing happens as I've gotten older, is to recognize, especially in couples, in relationships, like 98% of the fights are not, we're mad at each other. We're mad at a situation that is outside of us, and we have forgotten that we're on the same team.
Yep.
And so we feel like we're fighting one another to solve something that we need to solve together, because it's something outside of us that we're angry about.
Yeah.
And so I just think, again, it takes a moment of pause, and it takes some maturity, right? To be able
what are you really angry at or about in this moment?
And remember, we're on the same team. We don't need to fight each other about this. We need to combine our efforts and fight whatever the problem is together.
And that's the loss of control taking over, because what you're not saying in that is, not only is my spouse not on the same team as me with this issue, they're with the issue. They're working with the issue against me, which is a crazy thought to have, right?
Right. Yeah. But that's the interesting thing, right? So when we're angry, we justify these emotions so quickly, and it becomes really difficult to look at it black and white. You are now associating this person with the problem instead of your partner as your teammate, right? And and in work, y'all both work in offices with a lot of people. I'm a little more isolated, and probably for good reason, but But you see this in working relationships a lot of the time too, when you're mingling a lot of personalities. Not every personality meshes well. Does that mean that it justifies getting angry or shunning somebody or being snarky? Like, just because you don't like their flavor of person doesn't mean you have to meet that with some kind of negative response. Again, in your office, in theory, you should still be a team, right? Y'all are still working to make money, to take care of people, to provide them a good long-term outcome for their longevity in their life. But that can be really difficult, especially when you get outside of your at-home family, right? With like kids, it's easy. They smell like us. Our brain says, don't eat it. It's ours. Spouses, little easier. I think sometimes we do make the mistake of not necessarily punishing, but in that safe space, we tend to be our most raw self. But then when you bleed that out even into the world, I think a lot of people forget that, like, we're still all people. We're still as fundamentally all trying to just do the same thing, live the same life. Let's get along. Let's at least try to not meet every emotion as though somebody else is intentionally hurting you.
Well, and what comes to my mind when you say that is one of the tools that I use in trying to sort through or decide, deal with anger, is to look at the situation and decide, or the person, and say, they don't deserve my energy.
There right? You go. Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many things that I have just been like, I don't even care that you have had the response that you've had, because this does not deserve my energy. Yep. I've got things to get done.
I was going to I was going to say, in our world, we have almost an infinite number of prospects.
Right.
And the people who are the most successful at what we do, they have the same tagline. I work with people now that I want to work with.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I, in fact, I'm firing people right now.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to work with them.
Yep.
I think that's a healthy space. And maybe that's a fallacy. Maybe that's again, like, seeing success and thinking that that's what it is. But I got to tell you, I've been doing this job a year now.
Yeah.
And I'm a lot happier with the people I work with now than maybe I did 12 months ago.
Look, I don't work in the financial space, and I will tell you, in our business, it is the same thing. Your dollars aren't worth dealing with what you're going to cause in my day. And so, find somebody who it's worth it to. It's not worth it. And I do want to throw out,
there's a baseline of appropriate behavior.
Sure.
Though, right?
Yeah.
I can think of a guy who I don't want to work with anymore, but I'll respond to his emails.
Sure.
Because that's like the minimum effort that I can put in.
To caveat, we are not saying go down your list all the customers you don't like and give them an FU. Like, please do not take it like that. You can draw quiet boundaries.
Not a good plan.
Yeah, not if you like eating, but hey, you do you. I'll say too, we've talked about this a lot. One of the things that I this year have tried to use as a tool to keep myself in check, especially working remotely a lot, is, I have my AI journal, and I tend to write in my journal much more frequently when I'm upset than when I'm happy. But what I really like about it is I can go in and rant. I can get it out, especially when I'm having that moment of rage before I have acknowledged what I'm really upset about, or what, like, I can just spew it out, get it out of my head so it doesn't keep circling and feeding itself. And I can just get it all, like, it's funny, I can see the rage meter in my writing as I'm getting it all out, where I'm like, oh, now I'm doing that thing. Like, I literally start questioning myself. But I say all this to say, what I've started doing is, in the AI journal, I will go in and ask myself questions about, have I calmed myself down? Am I using tools? Is this negative self-speak language? Am I blaming? Am I shifting blame for something I should have taken responsibility for? I am using it as a way to audit myself. Why are you snickering at me?
I was thinking of my last interaction with AI, and it was making me angry, not calming me.
Sometimes it tells me truths I'm not ready to hear, and I don't like that. And sometimes I tell it to kindly F off, and we need to switch topics, and that's okay. But when I am in a space where I want to go back and see if I am using my anger for fuel, if I am finding healthy ways to navigate that, it has been an excellent outlet tool for me to just audit myself. And I like that there's not another actual human involved. It's something quietly I can do. So when I catch myself continuing to feed a negative cycle where I'm like, I'm not being honest about what I'm angry about, and I've turned it into rage, and I'm behaving in the kind of way that is derailing, not fueling, right? I can see that in my own privacy, and then I have the opportunity to just check myself. And then I can remind myself, hey, you're doing that thing again. And that's been for me a really great tool to try and keep things that would upset me as a fuel, and keep them from just letting me have blind rage and burn the world down. Even, I mean, I homeschool my kids because I got mad. So, I know firsthand, sometimes we go too far, and we got to reel it back a little bit.
So, Ashleigh, does your AI journal, is it just you inputting, or is it coming back with reflections like what I think you're actually angry about is?
So I have it set up where it can do both. So I do have a self-hosted one that is the only information it has is information I have input in it. Then sometimes what I will do is I will say, hey, give me a synopsis of this. And then I will put it in my actual internet accessibility one. I have a mode. My little brother writes AI code. So I'm kind of very blessed in the space. He wrote me a challenge me code bot. So I will put it in there and say, hey, challenge my views on this. And it'll come back and be like, okay, well, this sounds like this kind of behavior. Is that the kind of behavior you're saying you want to exhibit? And again, I'm at a place now, and Jennifer, we've talked a lot about this. Lewis, I don't know if you're aware, it is the year of the fire horse. Kind of a big deal, buddy, in case you were not aware. And Jennifer and I have been very open that we came into this year really looking for big change.
Got it.
Oh, we got it. So I'm very much in that space of self-auditing. I would not, before this year, have identified myself as an angry person. I just didn't, that's not what I would have seen myself as. But upon reflection, I have found that I'm actually incredibly reactive. I have a tendency, like you were saying, it's very apparent when I'm upset because I just shut down and I just get this glazed look and I just, sure, I'll get really kind of passive, almost infantilize the communication I'm using with somebody to make it very clear I am disinterested in their opinion any further. And I have had to evaluate that and turn it into something where I can go, ooh, I don't like that. Is that something I can change about me? And I'm really trying to focus on not changing external things right now, because apparently that's hard and not possible. They say, I hear, no matter how much you yell or scream, but I am trying to turn it into something like that. But all that to say, you get what you ask for, right? And so if you're going into the world and you're already convinced that everything sucks and you have every right to be angry and everything is happening to you, the world is going to continue to feed that, right? So if you are an angry person and you aren't auditing that and acknowledging whether or not you want to use it for motivation, the world is going to affirm that you have every right to be angry and a victim, I think.
Well, and that's kind of to connect some dots here, right? Is like,
we don't ever connect it. We just throw them in
there. I've been in that space, right? The shutdown. And it's easier said than done to get to not be shut down anymore. Because if you say or do the wrong thing, even if your heart of hearts, I think that this is the right thing to take the first step to resolve the issue, and it doesn't, and it has an adverse reaction, you're shutting down. It's even worse. So when you're in that moment, before you even take that first step, there's hesitation, because if I say the wrong thing to my wife right now, this argument's going to get even worse. And
fear and anger go hand in hand.
And so then what am I supposed to do? So having that chat bot, this is a secret time, right? We're in the trust tree. Nobody else is listening to this, right?
Circle of trust.
That story with my wife, that fight, at the end of the day, I went to my chat bot because I was like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. I just need to where is step one? And again, step one, what it told me to say to my wife was, you're not mad at me. I'm not mad at you. We're frustrated that the day didn't go how we wanted it to go. So just having that confidence to go back to her and say, like, yeah, that's the right way to start this, because there's no I, me, or you statements. It's a we statement, right? And that's one of those things. This is like a very small tool that I've tried to bake into my brain when I am dealing with those moments. As little you as possible. As little you did this, you said that. Right. Because that immediately puts that person on the defensive. Right, wrong, or indifferent. If they're on the defensive, they're going to say something to me that is going to shut me down even more.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's also, you use that anger of that day getting derailed as a fuel to figure out how you could get it back on track. And yes, you had to use some other tools, right? Externalize with the chat bot, go get a walk, but it did end up being able to motivate you. And now y'all can have that conversation and probably laugh about that was a ridiculous however many hours wasted, right?
And it's going to expand to more stuff in our, now that I have unlocked that box of how to emotionally deal with it, now I'm better prepared for what's next.
Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%.
Appreciate you sharing that story, and the fact that you resorted to using how do I even start this conversation, because that's all you needed.
I don't even know how I got here.
Right.
How do I start?
So what happened?
I don't know where I am. Yeah.
All right. I rarely know where I am, y'all. So you're already steps ahead of me. All righty. Well, do we have any extra tidbits or thoughts to add on here? And I do have some interesting research studies we can add to the show notes later if anyone is interested in viewing that. But any other final thoughts, y'all?
I think that, again, this is another area where I'm going to say we're not looking for perfection, right? We're looking for progress. And again, in trying to get progress, we have to give ourselves a little bit of slack or a little grace for the times that we've messed up. And I think, frankly, the times that we've messed up, we could try to apologize for, but if we don't have I don't have energy to spend my time focused on the things that I cannot change, right? And I know the things that happened in my past, I cannot change. I can try to be better going forward. Yeah. So that's where the focus should be. Like, how do I build myself these resources, these tools? Chat is a great one. I'm glad that one came out in this, taking a pause, doing some meditative, getting, just a moment of reflection before we engage in a conversation. I think all of those things are very valuable, and I appreciate you being here, sharing the way you use it. And I think that, again, it's not something to look back on. It's something to look forward to.
No, and I got, for anybody who wants a little turn your anger into motivation, there's a great song by Madeline Edwards called The Wolves. If you know me or you've ever been anywhere in a car with me, I'm sure you have heard this. It's also my go-to karaoke song these days. And to quote Beyonce, the best revenge is your paper. So don't get mad. Go forward, make more money, be better.
Right. Amen.
Absolutely.
All right. So thanks for being here. As always, if something came up in this conversation that you would like to take some time to sit in, please do talk about it, process it, write it down, talk it through, or talk with somebody you trust.
Comment, like, subscribe, all of the things. Let us know what you do. What has anger motivated you to, or maybe what have you learned getting a little ragey and wish you had done instead?
Or what tools do you use to deal with it, to help get you motivated? And you may have just said that, Ashleigh. And then also, if you're looking for some interaction in regard to this topic, this is what we will be discussing on Friday at our meeting in person. So join us at Whirl, which is our Women Helping in Real Life group that meets every Friday here at Rethink Wealth at 10801 North Mopac Expressway in Austin. We're at we're in Building 1, Suite 350. When you get off the elevator on the 3rd floor, just follow the noise.
And other than that, I hope everybody has a beautiful rest of your week. And until next time, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. See you soon.